Welcome to Macmillan Education. Latitudes and Longitudes.
Papa, I waited 5 minutes. Now, can I ask you a question?
All right, ask.
What are these horizontal and vertical lines all over this globe?
These are imaginary lines drawn by the geographers Ashe. They called latitudes and longitudes. These lines together form a network of lines on the globe or map called grid system. The points of intersection of latitudes with longitudes are at right angles and pinpoint the exact location of a place. Each longitude and latitude meets at one point.
What are latitudes and longitudes, Papa?
Remember, the Earth rotates on an imaginary line running through its center, like the one that this globe has. Now, this is called the axis. The end point of the axis on the top is the North Pole, and the one here at the bottom is the South Pole. Now look at the circle around the middle of the Earth, from west to east, exactly halfway between the two poles. It is called as the equator. The poles and the equators are used as reference points to locate places. The equator, or the Great Circle, divides the Earth into two equal parts, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. The equator represents 0 degrees, while the North Pole and the South Pole are 90 degrees north and 90 degrees south of the equator respectively.
These lines don't really exist, right? They are just used for our references.
Absolutely, Ashe. Now look into my laptop. This figure shows how latitudes are at an angular distance from the equator. Now look at this other picture. In order to measure equal distances from the equator, circles are drawn at an angular distance of 1 degree apart from the center of the Earth on both sides of the equator. The latitude is the angular distance of a place, north or south of the equator, as measured from the center of the Earth. Now in this next picture, you will see all lines of latitude are drawn parallel to the equator and run from west to east. These parallel lines are also called parallels of latitude.
So, Papa, how many of these parallels of latitudes are on our Earth?
Let me ask you this. If there are lines drawn at an angular distance of 1 degree apart from the equator and the poles are 90 degrees north and south, how many parallels of latitude will we have?
There are 180 parallels of latitude in all. 90 parallels in the northern hemisphere and 90 in the southern hemisphere, whereas the equator is at 0 degree.
Very good, my boy. Now the important lines of latitudes are the equator at 0 degree, the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degree north, the Tropic of Capricorn at 23.5 degrees south, the Arctic Circle at 66.5 degree north, the Antarctic Circle at 66.5 degrees south, the North Pole at 90 degrees north and the South Pole at 90 degrees south.
I'll remember them, Papa. Now, I forgot what are these vertical lines.
The vertical lines are called longitudes. These longitudes are the angular distance of a place on the surface of the Earth measured in degrees east or west of the prime meridian.
What is a prime meridian, Papa?
Like the equator, in order to have a common line of reference to measure east-west distance on the Earth, all countries of the world have agreed on the line of longitude passing through Greenwich in England as the 0 degree line. This is called the prime meridian. Now longitudinal lines are drawn around the Earth from the North Pole to the South Pole. These semicircles are of equal length and are the lines of longitude or meridians of longitude. To measure equal distance from the prime meridian, lines are drawn at an angular distance of 1 degree on both sides of the prime meridian.
So they are just like the latitudes, but vertical. Right, Papa?
You're partly right and partly wrong. If you look closely at this picture here, you will notice that meridians of longitude are not parallel to each other. They are farthest apart at the equator and draw closer as they approach the poles where they meet. Again, while latitudes do not have the same circumference length, all lines of longitudes are of equal length and have the same circumference.
Now I notice that difference. How many meridians do we have in total?
There are 360 meridians in all, 180 to the east and 180 to the west of the prime meridian. Look at this picture here. You will find 0 degree or the prime meridian and the 180 degree meridian together forming a complete circle, the Great Circle, which divides the earth into 2 equal halves, the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. If you join any 2 opposite longitudes, they too will become a great circle, and the sum total of their degrees will always be 180 degrees. Look, the meridians of longitude are drawn at intervals of 10 degrees. Also, each meridian is numbered and labeled with either the letter east or the letter west, indicating its location in the eastern or western hemisphere. For example, if you were at the 3rd meridian east of the prime meridian, your longitude would be 30 degrees east.
Papa, let me look at the grid system and tell you where Delhi is.
Sure, let's get to the car. And why just Delhi? On our way back home, tell me where Mumbai, Kolkata, Bangalore is. And also New York, where your uncle lives in the US.
Okay, that'll be fun.